Hey Josh, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
How's that? Can you hear that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the heads up, Sophie. Is Stephanie in? She was. She's in there? I didn't know she'd been. Yeah, she's in there. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, public meeting. Thank you all. Minutes taken, all that. Speaking for it, we're in. Do we have any public input on non-agenda items this month?
I have a question I'd like to ask. In the event that you're not able to make a meeting,
Yep.
do we have any procedure whereby there's a vice chairman that could chair the meeting?
Elliot is the vice chairman. So typically, if I'm not gonna be here, I will reach out.
So
to him
like
and
we
say-
could have, like last Tuesday,
I could have just said.
Elliot would have chaired for
Yep.
us.
Yep.
That happened a couple months ago.
Yeah, I remember. So
Yeah,
that's
good point.
So, I mean, all due respect, all of us have busy lives.
Oh, yeah. I will tell you the reason that I rescheduled this meeting was, I was actually here, was.
Yes, I know you were here.
Was that, we didn't have the information that I thought we needed from the town regarding, the birth arrangements.
All right, did we notify the public that the meeting was postponed?
We put it on, it's on the website and then it gets reposted, if you will. And that's all we do. We don't actually have to public, we don't have to send something out to the public.
No,
We
but I
just
mean,
change
it's
it on
it's
the-
on the
It's on the
website.
website.
So,
It was on the 12th,
so not only the 9 people that had to rearrange their schedules, but the public
the
as well.
public as well. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the future, if you're going to cancel and it is because you don't have information,
Yep,
could you make us aware of that, or at least make me aware of it?
yep,
So I know why we're
why we're.
disrupting our schedule.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree and I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's important to
And it's happening
maintain
more
consistency.
frequently. Yeah.
Yep. I agree, consistency is important. Yes, Elliot.
I think I noticed that Sophie was speaking but not being heard.
Oh, Sophie, you're on mute.
It happens to me often to be speaking and not being heard. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you.
But no, excellent point, Tom. We do need to try to keep consistency in the schedule for ourselves, the public, et cetera. I will say that in the past, in the summertime, the harbor committee didn't actually even meet in the summertime because everybody was so busy in the harbor. So now we're meeting more frequently. Any other public input on non-agenda items? I actually have one that's not on the agenda, so I guess it is a non-agenda item. And I don't know if you know anything about this, Sophie. I noticed in tonight's select board meeting that there is a discussion item regarding cruise ships. Do you know anything about that?
I do. We touched upon this last at the last select board meeting because we raised the issue that the cruise ships were no longer stopping in Camden, and we wanted to know why. And I think Audra was going to reach out to the cruise ship company because they used to come a few years ago. I think it was before COVID. And after COVID, they've been just docking or anchoring in Rockland, and the passengers are coming through bus. So we wanted to have a better understanding of what happened because some people would like to see the cruise ship back. In fact, last week we had the Emerald Princess back in town for the first time. So it's just to get an update on why the cruise ships are no longer docking. What can we do to make Camden a more welcoming harbor for cruise ship, and having a discussion on that.
Okay, I will say that there was a newspaper account that said something about, cruise ships were coming to the mid-coast this week or last couple of weeks. And it included a stop in Camden by a large cruise ship, a 3,000
Yep.
passenger cruise ship. And I was like, whoa.
Yep.
And Elliot maybe had flagged it, and a couple other folks wrote to me as well. So,
Yep.
I wrote to Steve Pixley and Audra and asked them about that. And Audra was nice, wrote back quickly and said, yeah, that was a mistake, if you will. And that the ship was gonna be in Rockland and they would bus the passengers up on, I think, the 12th. Steve, a few days later, did chime in and say, just for the record, we can't handle, our infrastructure can't handle any vessels with more than 50 passengers. So that was interesting to me. That was a little surprising. I knew that we were restricted I thought it was less than 200 passengers, but I think what he meant, I'm guessing here, I don't want to speak for him, but I think that he meant 200, maybe there's 200 passengers on the boat, but yeah, something like that. But I do know, and I think it would be a good question to ask, because there is a lot of when this went around, I started getting these questions. People said, well, there's an ordinance against cruise ships, because this came up at the harbor committee level several years ago. And I don't believe it's actually written into the ordinance, but it is.
I don't think
written-
either. Yeah.
It is written into the fee structure that
Yes.
there's a limit. So I think that would be a good thing to talk about tonight at the select board level. And maybe that we should be codifying the restriction on cruise ships, on large cruise ships. I know that we don't have the capacity. I was just in Newport, Rhode Island yesterday, and there are 2 massive cruise ships docked there right now. And I can tell you firsthand how much that took over, not just the harbor, and it's a huge harbor, but also the town, because they had, and maybe there's only 50 people in each one of these little lifeboats that they use to transport people, but it was absolute chaos and very negatively affected the harbor. It's a beautiful harbor, there's a beautiful bridge there, and you can't see any of it. There were 2, they tower over Goat Island. I was blown away, I'll be honest, as you can see. I was like, wow. So I think we need to be very, very careful of cruise ships.
Oh, I agree, and it could be a very controversial issue. I mean,
Yeah.
It
It is actually.
very disruptive,
Yeah, and there's the environmental impact. You could
especially
see-
to a community this size.
You could see these things just sitting there belching. The environmental impact of a large cruise ship, and I'm talking, the 2,000 or 3,000 passenger ones is well documented and pretty extensive. So I don't think we want that sitting in Camden Harbor or even in the coastal harbor. But and so I would hope that if the select board is going to be talking about making any changes, that you would involve us at the harbor committee level, since
Yeah.
it will be in the harbor, outer harbor, coastal harbor, inner harbor. So it's very much our purview. Yeah, Elliot.
In our harbor fee lists, I believe 2019 was the last one that listed a cruise ship limit of 175 passengers, and then the definition of a cruise ship size disappeared after 2019.
Maybe it's a clerical thing.
And Sophie, you may look at the history of fees that the town has charged cruise ships, because there was a significant increase. And I can't cite exactly what year that was, but probably 2 or 3 years ago, it went up significantly.
Yep.
And
I actually- I remember this conversation very well. Thank you for bringing it back. Because I think we had either Steve Pixley or, for some reason, I remember Beth weighing on this, but I may be wrong, so don't take my word for it. But basically, the information we got to make that decision on the cruise ship fees was the insensitivity to price on the size of cruise ship. If they want to come to Camden, they'll pay whatever price. And I think that's the basis we use to increase the fee, saying we should get a more significant fee given the disruption to the harbor, to the town, etc. But I will because I remember that harbor committee discussion when we looked at the fees, but I will look into the history. If you have any information you want to share, I'd be glad to look into that.
Yep.
So it was, in 2019, the cruise ship fees were $800. In 2020, we raised it to $1,600
Okay. And that's per visit, I believe.
per visit, yes,
Not per season, per visit.
Per visit.
per visit.
Yeah.
Bob, she's turning. Mike.
Oops. Yeah, just on the input side, I wouldn't assume at all, and I'm hearing that it's coming through, that cruise ships are not necessarily hip hip hooray. And aside from what they do out in the water, and this came up in an earlier conversation we had about how much real benefit cruise ships provide to the town. And just one little vignette, when they came in a week or 10 days ago, I happened to be coming down Chestnut Street when they were crossing with their, little tags on, and had just gotten here, and they asked about where they could eat. And when I suggested, well, you look like you're from out of town, you might think about something like the waterfront on the harbor. And basically, they were not given enough time in Camden to risk sitting down at the waterfront and ordering food. So the idea that they are really coming to town and generating economic benefit, I think what they really are is an item on the cruise ship schedule that says, hey, you're really in luck because you're going to Camden today to walk around, get back in the bus and go home.
Well, because the cruise ships, it's their business to make as much revenue off of each customer on the ship.
Right.
They're not making money when they come to shore. That doesn't mean that they keep, they're not trapped on the ship, of course. But that's deliberate. I believe, that they need them to be eating on the ship as much as possible. So,
Yeah, there was some feedback also from store owners a few years ago that people come, they walk in stores and they pick up trinkets basically. So they're not really buying big purchase items. It's a big disruption to the stores. Some of them forget to pay. We heard that complaint a few years back. So it's really a matter of, we want to be a welcoming town, but we want everybody to be happy about it, right? It has to work for everyone. So I think a discussion on it is welcome indeed.
But Sophie, you just didn't understand on the people who forgot to pay. They thought it was an all-inclusive cruise.
So
I'm glad you set the record straight for me, Bob. Thank you.
we did have a cruise ship visit last week.
we had a cruise ship not visit Camden, but they had a large cruise ship in Rockland. And they bust them.
Bust them up, okay.
Yep. The small, I think probably what Sophie's referring to is I don't believe ever had a large cruise ship, and by that's like 2,000 passengers, one of the big ones.
No.
I don't believe we've ever had one of those in Camden. Logistically, et cetera, it'd be pretty bizarre. We used to have the American cruise lines, the smaller ones, up to, I think they're 200 to 250, they seem to be growing a bit. But they used to anchor in Camden and ferry them in, by boat. And now they seem to be they have an arrangement now with Rockland. I just read so they're all docking at the dock. They don't have to do the boats, back and forth and that kind of thing. They also they now own their bus lines. They used to contract with local bus carriers to bring people up, and that was another positive, I guess, that was presented, at least in Rockland, was, well, they're contracted with local companies. This is a good business for them. And now they actually own their bus lines, you see. So that is out. So, and that's sort of the cruise industry playbook is to buy, if you go to Alaska or anything, all of those storefronts downtown are actually owned by the cruise ships. So then, and restaurants, so then they're keeping it in their own, to your point, in that own pool. So, thank you for bringing that up, Sophie, and it'll be a good discussion, I'm sure. Yeah, Mark.
So Sophie, while you're looking at that, I would suggest looking at the arrangement with the buses and the drop off there. And because in the harbor, we charge $1,600 per trip. What our actual fee is there, and I mean, because that's quite disruptive to the town also.
Got these big cruise, the big.
To the buses, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yep.
Cool, sounds like you've got the discussion going already, so here you go.
I haven't seen any
Thank
buses
you, everyone.
this year.
I haven't seen any buses going,
I-
I've seen anything either, that's a good point.
Well, they're not,
They drop off at the Village Green and then they go park.
yeah, Dominic is not
And then
running.
parking is so right.
Because they're not running out.
Yeah, they're not sitting there
Screwed
running,
up.
they go park, check. Hannaford maybe, I don't know.
Yep, and I did actually, to that point, Bruce, is slightly off topic, but I did, Tom Babbitt, who came and presented to us a while back, and, the neighbor over there, did say that this summer has been far better, because there were no, buses, idling. He thanked us as a committee for moving that forward. All right, thank you. Moving on to the minutes, which I know you all read as closely as I did, from August. Anybody have any thoughts, changes?
I read them. I wasn't here for the meeting,
Right,
but I do appreciate the clarity and conciseness of the minutes,
yeah,
you know.
I agree, actually, that's a great point, Mark, because sometimes, I mean, minutes for other meetings, not just this committee, can get kind of lengthy, and I think you're hitting the right point here, Bruce. It's a great point. It's a tough job to keep your minutes.
Yeah,
Anybody have, thoughts or a
Motion,
motion?
they're awake at the meetings.
Anybody have a thought or a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Elliot, second, from anybody? I'll make a second on that one, I think I can second that. All those in favor of accepting the August 8th minutes?
I had to
One,
abstain.
2, 3, you have to abstain because you weren't
I
here.
wasn't here. and
And you
didn't
weren't
read it.
here, so you have to abstain. Tom, you?
I was here.
You were here. You voted yay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Four. Awesome. Thank you all. Wait, I have to do this on the phone. Here we go. Committee membership update. Sylvia, I want to make sure you knew this one. I did receive a note, and have some communication with Margie Gross. Her schedule has gotten, quite busy on personal side, so she has resigned from the harbor committee. So we do have a vacancy. Sylvia, I know that we do have, at least one, Jim Bennett has submitted a letter of interest, and, so I hope that the select board can take that up pretty quickly to get us back up to full speed.
So other than present company, who's currently on the board?
I think this is all of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's normally 7.
And Margie was a non-voting member,
And
right?
Margie, well, she was an alternate.
Martin was in, yeah.
She was an alternate, yeah. Which is often.
So who's our other alternate?
Me.
You're an alternate, yeah. So why don't we step you up as?
Well, she was an alternate.
No, she was, Margie and I were both alternates.
Oh,
So we don't have,
yeah, yeah.
So we're all here except for,
We're all here today. This is a
Full Margie.
full house because Margie is not, she's not actually absent. She's, because she's no longer on the committee. All right, it looks like we do not have Steve, which is unfortunate. He obviously was pretty busy over the weekend. We were just talking informally before the meeting. Quite a storm, one of the larger storms that are, one of the largest winds that I've seen in the inner harbor for sure.
Really?
As
I
with.
would have thought the angle would have mitigated it.
The inner harbor seemed, it seemed to be wrapping around Mount Bannock. And, Mark and I were just saying, like, I would say we had 50 in the inner harbor.
It's interesting because up by Shirt Tail, in the morning when it was really windy, it was from the west.
Because it was wrapping.
Yeah, I think
They
that's the
bounced
same
around the
thing.
mountain.
Yeah.
Because Sherman's Cove, which a lot of the boats moved over into Sherman's Cove with the forecast, was great. I don't think that was.
It was great. I only lost my wind vane,
Nice.
which I don't think had been attached properly in the first place. But I noticed something really interesting because I came in the morning as well, and I drove around to the yacht club, and then I went to Lyman Morris to the parking lot. The inner harbor was a funnel. You could see how fast the wind was funneling through that inner harbor, and you could look at the color of the water and the ripples of the water. And yeah, Northeast Point and Sherman's Cove, much quieter. And really the direction of the wind really helped us because there was no swell, no waves. So we got super lucky, I think.
We got super lucky because there was no swell. I'm still confused
swell.
why there wasn't, because the swells were
Wind
so.
going the opposite direction.
Yeah, but that doesn't usually swells will
Yeah.
beat the wind, and then you get a washing machine.
Yeah.
That's what I was worried about, was that it would.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah, I was at Steamboat at 11 a.m. and the wind was very strong from the north and west,
Mhm.
as opposed to last December when it was all coming in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Something, yep.
Southeast.
And I know Steve put out a call on Wednesday or Thursday, I forget which day, telling people to, pull their boats from the inner harbor finger float system.
They didn't pull
And,
them.
what's that?
They didn't
No.
pull them.
They didn't pull
The
dock.
dinghies
Well-
from Steamboat, I thought, because
Yeah.
they didn't pull a lot of boat in a harbor.
They pulled he put a call out for, everybody to pull their boats from the finger floats, the ones up by the waterfall.
Right.
Not everybody did, but a lot of them did. And he did, ask for everybody to do that. I'm not gonna speak for him, but I'm suspecting that's partially to protect the dock system. You know what I mean? The anchors for that thing are only so strong. And I think because it was from the west, or from the north, we were, pretty protected in there. But anyway, I think everybody did a great job of protecting their boats, hauling, obviously. And it's a little earlier than people wanted to pull out their boats this year, but I think everybody was pretty happy.
Were there any reports of any breakaways?
I don't think there were any breakaways.
No
Uh,
breakaways. No
one boat had
breakaways.
One boat had a jib unfurl, so.
Yeah.
Unfurled
that usually-
at Lake Beach. Yeah,
that will
there's
often make it breakaway.
And
there
we
was no
lost any-
breakaway. The thing also to note, and maybe we should tell Steve that, I mean, if you and Elliot went to the harbor and you saw that the finger floats with only one boat were faring far less better than the finger floats with two. So I mean, in the future, it might be useful to make sure we have two boats on the finger floats.
You mean the inner harbor floats, the floating dock
Yeah,
there?
the inner harbor float. Yeah,
Yeah.
because when there was only one boat, that was not it was not a happy boat. I noticed one jib halyard that got loose, so a few, but nothing. Yeah, no breakaways. Just that jib at Lake Beach, which drove everybody crazy for 24 hours. But all good.
I will
other
say,
than that.
it sort of called attention to the need and the quality of the inspections
Yeah,
that we do
I-
every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
I used to have a mooring and I was always like, oh, every year we have to get these inspected, what a pain, and it's kind of expensive and all of that. Now you see why.
Especially if they.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually am glad you're bringing this up because I had a discussion with little Jody. We know we have two Jodys at the town, so we have Big Jody and Little Jody, and she's our harbor clerk. We're going to be rethinking the process of getting the mooring, the calendar between getting the mooring fee and the inspection, because usually you get the mooring fee by the end of April, but the inspection report isn't due before June 15th. So and we don't have a good review process to make sure that every mooring has been inspected. And I think there was a little bit a lag because we didn't have a harbor clerk for a year or a season or two. So something maybe we'll bring to the harbor committee for advice, but there needs to be a better the syncing between syncing is the wrong term, but matching, the paying for the harbor fees for your mooring fees and having the report in a more timely fashion, because it's just it doesn't work very well.
Well, I think the mooring inspectors need to be in that loop.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, the simple solution, if inspections are done by, what'd you say, June 15th?
That's when they're due.
Yeah, so if the inspections are done June 15th, then that's when your mooring fee should be due. And when you pay your mooring fee, you have your inspection report.
Right, it all goes in together.
It's all,
Yeah,
Except for-
but then you sync the boat registration fees and all. I mean, I don't know why once we have a harbor clerk, why is it that hard for the harbor clerk to set aside whatever amount of time to simply go through and make sure that each mooring is synced up with an inspection report?
Well, I think it also has to do maybe with having a database that is easier to analyze than paper, permits, things like that. So I think it's a little bit of a larger discussion, but we need to have a process that's very clear so that we know that it's that each mooring report is received on time, and that the mooring fees are paid and things like that. So it's a little bit of a larger discussion, but know that it's something that we're looking, that the harbor clerk is looking into. So we'll bring the harbor committee into that.
I would be curious if in that discussion, when you're talking to the inspectors and all that, if there's sort of standards for the moorings themselves, the chain and the moorings for those inner harbor floats. I noticed some of them seem to be moving around a whole lot more than others, and I thought,
Yeah.
is there like a standard scope that they do on these things? I don't actually know.
I don't know about scope, but there is a standard for the size of the mooring and the size of the chains for the size of the boat.
Yeah, this would be, I think it'd be.
It might be the inspectors. that
Yeah,
do that.
some of them just seem, I thought, I wonder if some of them have longer, I don't wanna get into their business, but it did seem like a few of them, there was a couple at the head of the harbor that were whipping around, and I was like,
Woof. Yeah, I mean, all those things, I'll put it on the list, and but
Yeah.
I'll make sure the harbor committee is involved and that our inspectors are involved as well. But it just needs to be streamlined and we need to have mooring fees and the inspection closer together, because it's just
yeah.
not working right now. Okay.
All right, so next, this is to Tom's point, kind of interesting. The next item is the license and berth transfer process for day sailors and windjammers. I asked the town for the documentation for the dockage agreements between the day sailors and the town for their overnight dockage. So just, I think everybody knows this, but there is an arrangement where if the windjammers at the head of the harbor, only the three at the head of the harbor, when they're gone, when they're out, then the day sailors can use their berth for overnight dockage. And it's very much of a sub level, I guess you call it. I'm not sure what the right word is, but where the windjammer has the rights. And so my parents did this for a long time, obviously, and they would get a call from the Louis R. French that said, hey, we're coming in. Our trip was cut short for whatever reason, and they would have to leave. So that's not a primary. There is the windjammers have primary rights, and this is sort of fill-in subletting for when they're gone. The short story is there does not appear to be any contract between them that they could find.
Between whom?
Between the town and the day sailors. What there is a fee arrangement. So it is taken care of in the invoicing. So it appears on their invoice, their bill from the town. This is for a day sailor. Here's your license fee, whatever that is, a couple of $1,000. And then here's your overnight berth fee, which I believe, looking at the fee schedule, is $600.
$600. Yeah.
Per season?
Per season. That's what I could find. I was surprised by that, I'll be honest. And I think that would be something that we should be.
But do they get invoiced one night, $50, whatever the
No.
number is? So they don't
No.
even pay, they're not paying.
They pay for the season.
600.
Season.
This is just for the head of the harbor.
Just for the head of the harbor. those
They
three-
pay
Oh,
theoretically nightly
At the
at the
public
town, at the public
That's right.
land.
right, but so the fee we're talking about, there's a blanket fee for however many nights they end up getting at the head of the harbor. There's a fee for using the floats to come and go all day long.
Yeah.
That's the second fee, and then a third fee for,
If they choose to stay at the public landing on one of those slips overnight, then they pay an additional fee there, separate fee.
And that's a flat rate as well.
Nope, that is a negative.
See, but that's not for every boat. There are certain boats that have the agreement at the head of the harbor.
Right.
It's not all the
Yeah,
boats.
right.
But for instance, take Surprise, for instance, they have this arrangement where they go to the head of the harbor. But if like the Louis R. French, which is in their spot, is in and Surprise still needs a place to go for the night, they do have a mooring in the outer harbor they could go to. They will contact Steve Bixley and say, hey, we would like to stay at the public landing tonight. And we say, well, we're full, or, okay, no problem. And they pay a fee for that. I don't know what the number is per night.
Well, do they open up the Swift and Mercantile spots?
No,
No, they don't, even if those are empty, no one stays there.
they would, I believe they would open them to anybody who wanted to,
Oh, okay.
a day sailor that wanted to tie up. I think they would, because those are just.
Or a North Transient.
When the Swift and Mercantile and formerly the Matty or Great Bailey, whatever, was gone, then those spots were open to any
Anybody.
transient. And
Yeah,
that's,
okay.
I guess that's the point is, in the eyes of the town, those are, these sort of transient boats at that point. They have a different rate than the standard
Yeah.
transients from away or whatever, but, yeah, so I would suggest that we, the town have a, contract for that, to make that clear, that is a overnight, I'm not sure what, secondary dockage, maybe you call that, something like that, saying overnight dockage is secondary to the windjammers. You have the primary rights.
Do you know how many of the day sailors take advantage of that?
Two currently
Two.
take advantage of it. But this is another question I have, is there are 3 berths at the head of the harbor. Mary Day, Louis R. French, and Angelique. Lazy Jack and Surprise currently use 2 of them. I believe the Louis R. French and the Mary Day slip. The Angelique slip is not used. It's a little bit of a different slip, it's a different configuration slightly, but I'm disappointed that Steve's not here, but I would want to ask him why. I went over and looked at it. It certainly looks to me like it could be used by a day sailor. It is a town-owned facility, so yeah, I
So,
think that would be a third.
so I can, read you what the ordinance, how the ordinance addresses this, if you'd like. In the event that the berthing slip is not being used by the vessel to which the slip has been leased, then the town can rent that berthing slip temporarily to other vessels as long as those other vessels do not unreasonably interfere with the use of the vessel. So, I mean, it is in the ordinance.
Yeah, it gives them the right to do that.
What I would suggest is that we add the fee structure to the actual fee schedule.
I think it's on there. The $600 fee schedule is $600 fee.
Seasonal berthing day sailor, $655, this is
655.
2022 here.
I like seeing the boats and the slips.
Yeah, and if we have to slips, then. why not
Yeah,
use it?
I would like to see them used more, because oftentimes that's completely empty. It's
Yeah.
nice having the mast, traditional mast there.
Yep, I would agree with that. And it's the larger, it's the larger boats, the multi-passing, many, inspected vessels, are what have been using those. Anyway, that in terms of, process, that is something that I think would clarify, just that it should be, I hate to have yet another contract, because there's already the the commercial passenger vessel license agreement, and then there's the day sailor, public landing addendum or harbor park addendum for the Indians. So this will be yet another contract that they have signed, but these are businesses, they're used.
Well,
If it's in the ordinance and it's in the fee schedule, then we need more.
I think that there should be an agreement between, something in writing between the town, and a individual vessel that says, yes, you have the right to this slip. Because
so I wonder if that's just a line item we could add to the initial agreement. And just call it additional dockage fees.
Well,
or something like that.
I have a question that's, I think, related to your point. How many day sailors are paying the seasonal berthing $655?
Two,
Me too.
Okay, and the rest of them have their own
Their own other
moorings
arrangements. Yep,
or
exactly.
other arrangements.
right.
correct.
So if you put it in the agreement, then they might change that arrangement. They might want to switch from a $655 fee to their own mooring.
Well, no, I mean, they all have their own mooring. They all have their own mooring. This is just a convenience dockage thing.
Correct. Yeah, they all have a mooring in the outer harbor. That they can use, so it's not that they're homeless by any means. And then it's a matter of, and then it's just a matter of, right, where do you?
And the other, I mean, the justification for the day sailors is that when the boats are at the dock and visible, it's advertising.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Good for the town, yeah.
yeah,
And for them though.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, it's because they can go on and off the dock.
Well, they can't load passengers with that.
No, but they can load supplies and
Yep.
do stuff like
yeah,
that.
but the point is, I mean, if the boat's there when it's not sailing, then people are seeing it, say, oh, that's the boat we want to go out.
That's pretty, I wanna go on that. far.
Well, how many seasonal berthing slots are there?
We
I
just talked
believe,
about that.
yeah,
There's
I,
possibly three, but there's use of two right now.
And where are those two?
at the head of the harbor at the library park there, the one that comes down from Library Park by the American Boat House.
Yeah,
The Mary Day.
yes, okay, I got that. And so not the day sailor dock.
Not the
No,
day sailor.
no.
This is totally separate from the day sailor dock, has nothing to do with that. This is just, it's really just it's truly an overnight dockage.
But that's a good point. Who overnights on the day sailor dock? How's that decided?
I think that's a Steve fix the question.
Pixley handles
Yeah,
that
he handles
casually.
that as well.
And that's the a la
When do they
carte.
pay for that?
I believe that they pay for
So the windjammers can't make a deal with a day sailor to use their
No,
it. The windjammers
head of the
have no
harbor
no,
berth.
correct.
that's all.
That's a
Town.
formal town.
Yeah.
So I think that sort of clarifies where, how the arrangement works. What it doesn't clarify, and this is one of the things that the, town asked us to look into, is the transfer process. So this all came up largely or in part because of the, Lazy Jack sale that happened recently. And the transfer, how is the license transferred? And I would argue that the license is the same arrangement, if you will. And the transfer process as it is currently is someone who wants to buy a day sailor or a windjammer comes to us, to the Harbor Committee first, and says, I want to buy this, here's who I am. And here's what I'm proposing to do, and we offer a recommendation to the select board about whether or not that is correct. No, if we advise that transfer to go through.
So, and the way the agreements are written now, that is not a given. That the license does not transfer. The owner doesn't have the right to say, here's my license.
No, yeah, correct.
But
There's not,
boats, current boats do get preferential treatment.
but in the ordinance, it
Yes.
says.
And it's boats, it's not homes.
Exactly.
That's for the head of the harbor dockage.
That's
No.
for that's for the license. So there's 7
It's for the day.
day sail licenses, and the same process is for the windjammers. There are 5 technically, 6 windjammer licenses. And the same process would be for the.
And
windjammers.
the dockage at the head of the harbor. Forget about the transfer at this point, but just year after year after year, if you've been there, you can stay there.
Yes.
If you haven't abused it.
If you haven't abused it, that's what's in the ordinance,
Yeah.
exactly. So that would be the, that's the existing system. I think it's a good system. I think it seems to work, and I like that, and where this a little bit got hung up or something, a little hiccup in the system, was this past year with the Lazy Jack transfer. That tried to happen for good reasons to help the owners, et cetera, without going to the harbor committee. It went straight to the select board.
It came before.
Because I asked it to come back.
Oh,
When I started on the agenda at the select board level, I said, we haven't seen this. And so they rightfully said, oh, yes, okay, hold on. So then we slowed the process a little bit. The owners were great about bearing with us because it is a little bit of a slowdown for their closing and all of that. But I thought it was important that it does go through that process. And then it was approved, and then I heard wonderful things about Gus's operation this summer, for Lazy Jack. I've seen some really good reviews and all that, so that's awesome. So, that's kind of where that's my recommendation, or that's kind of where I'm seeing it, is that's the process. And the question was, how would a new vessel, come into the harbor? What opportunities do we have for a new passenger vessel to come in? And, to that, I would say, obviously, any new vessel or operator should come to us, come to the harbor committee first, and we'll talk harbor master
If
first.
they want to dock.
If they-
dock.
If they want to use town facilities, yep, then they should come to the harbor master first. That anybody would make that call and talk to Steve. And then if they wanted to carry it forward, then they would come to us. And we would begin a conversation. And if there are no available licenses, then, according to the ordinance, I would say that it's full. We're at full capacity. If there's no problem, but if there is a problem with one of the other operators, it's been challenging or whatever, Steve might say, this operation has been difficult. And maybe that would come into his.
speaking of that, it's always been very subjective. And the reviews seem to consist of, oh, he's a nice guy. And so where I'm going with
What's the
that,
problem with that?
well,
Not just he's a nice guy, but there was no problem with the other boats and.
where I'm going with this is maybe there ought to be some sort of formal review process and review document. Specifying, how many complaints during the year have there been for this vessel? Are they complying by all the rules, and how many warnings have they gotten for X and X and X parking or speed or whatever? And that stuff ought to be documented.
I think that's a great idea, like sort of formal. I know that Steve does have,
And
we do see his
We-
sort of review form, but it's pretty basic, it's pretty, and so maybe it is time to, that review is only a year or two old, so, whereas.
We finally have written reviews.
Yeah, so now we want a better written review, I think is what we're saying, more.
So I think it's great. I think, does the harbor committee want to suggest 3 or 4 items that should be put on in the form? As Mark was just saying, do you guys do you want to suggest, a few things that you feel the harbor master should be measuring in those reviews?
Yeah, a
I-
little, yeah,
I think there's a second question. That we have 7 day sailors now. And one question is if the Tom Brady of day sailors or Linda Bean Lobster, remember when they started, it was like, whoa, this is a new model. So if you have someone who comes in and says, I'm gonna run the primo day sailor operation that's gonna improve your harbor in 10 different ways, should that person be able to bump out someone who's existing and is just sort of carrying on? But then the second, think I probably know the answer to that question, but are we really getting into minimum performance standards that you have to have gone out X number of days in the season? That whatever, I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind, but, or how many passengers are we gonna have minimum standards? Cause I think it's tricky right now, as is being discussed, that, Steve is sort of seat of the pants saying this person has not been a problem, they're carrying on, they're doing okay, but, you know, if we ever had an actual dispute, that's not gonna be what the courts call objective standards.
I think, I would say, to your point, Sophie, I think, we need to have Steve a part of the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yep.
About what items might be on that checklist. I don't want to, a little bit, we're not micromanaging, but, he's the one who's down there, so he knows exactly what potential conflicts would be, so,
And-
why
and
don't
I think
I'll
he's-
do that. I'll
Yeah,
leave
yeah, I
that-
think it's a great idea to have a conversation with him because he's been, I mean, he looks at how many days, you know, what's
Yeah.
the activity, are they actually, you know, taking passengers, but more on you're correct, on a subjective level, like he knows what's happening. But I think if we put in place, you know, it doesn't need to be 12 criteria, by the way, it can be just, you know, 3 or 4. It doesn't mean to be very complicated, but it should be the same for everyone. It should be for next season. Of course, we cannot do anything for this season because that would not be fair. But remember also that the licenses are for 3 years and they all start the same date. So in fact, if somebody wants to come in year 2, there's nothing they can do. They have to wait until the term expires. The terms
No,
expire
no,
for
no,
licenses,
no,
correct?
No, because even though it's a 3-year contract, the annual reviews.
Annual reviews could weigh in. Okay.
Allow us to,
So-
terminate.
The new vote finishes the contract.
So that's
Then
so
these-
let's make sure. So that's a very good point. So we
So
really need to have
the-
a better annual review process.
Right,
I'm not so sure.
I think we just need to, clarify it a little bit. We've gotten it right. We've
With
gotten
better
it
written
written.
review.
Now we're going to improve what's on that.
And we have an oral review of that with Steve. Maybe violations can be stapled onto that if there's violations.
I think, let's just talk to Steve and see
Okay, yeah.
what he says. I think,
Yeah.
and then to your point, Bob, just to finish that up, according to the ordinance, even if XYZ, you know, operator came in and said, I'm gonna do this, you know, whatever, according to the ordinance, no, they could not.
Bounce.
They can't bounce someone up.
Right.
It says pretty clearly
Yeah.
that preference will be given to, provided that there's no issues.
And that sort of has to be in there. Somebody who buys a boat is not gonna be able to get a loan. They can get bounced.
No, I get all that, and I agree with that. And I think it sort of came up, I think, luckily, I'm not that familiar, so I don't remember names and exact circumstances, but there was some discussion of an underused boat.
Yeah.
So that issue
Yep.
does exist, but I don't know if we have what I was saying, minimum performance standards of what does using your license actually require you to do
Mhm.
positively?
I'm looking at what I believe are our current agreement documents here, and I'm trying to find, using the Day Sailor as an example, where the harbor master review is mentioned.
The license.
The licensing agreement.
Yeah, commercial fast
Yes,
investment.
well, I'm looking at that and.
Number 4, each licensee shall be subject to
Oh,
an
okay.
annual review.
There it is there. All right, so this is what we're talking about, could use some formalization
Yes,
and transparency.
yes.
The harbor master's review process and criteria.
Criteria, yeah, exactly.
Steve did fill out a form for each boat.
You did, yep.
Also, in the agreement, I'm not seeing anything about termination of the agreement.
There were. I mean, well, it's with the, it's in the annual review, but it says if the review goes poorly.
It
There's
doesn't
a,
state anything about that. There's no explicit statement that the review can result in termination. And I asked that because I was thinking about this whole process of transferring an operation, of licensing of an operation from one operator to another. And it just made me wonder, an agreement gets terminated. Vessel number one, existing vessel doesn't want to operate anymore, they want to sell out, so their agreement is terminated. And a new agreement is entered into with the new operator. And also, this leads me to go back to some questions I asked at our last meeting about other businesses in town. A bar, restaurant, hotel, what other, the other businesses that are licensed by the town? What is the transfer process for those businesses?
The new owner reapplies.
But those are a little different, Elliot, because they're not. A restaurant license isn't using the
state.
town facilities. They're just getting an approval that they. I don't know what goes into the town's approval, but obviously there's sanitation and various things that you have to show.
So for liquor licenses and victualers licenses, there are state licenses, so they have to reapply. They're not attached to the business or the owner. So you buy a new B&B, you have to reapply for the lodging license. You buy a restaurant, actually, usually when you buy a restaurant, you rename it, everything, so you have to relicense it.
License with whom?
The town, the
For
state.
the town and the
Yeah.
state. And there's a review from the fire department, from or safety perspective, from code. So there's a whole process there, but it's you have to reapply. Or to apply, actually, not reapply, but apply.
Okay.
So I think we're getting a little off track.
Yeah. I just want to follow, just to close the loop on what you raised, Elliot, about termination. In that commercial passenger vessel license agreement, it says failure of the licensee to abide by the terms and provisions of this licensing agreement within 72 hours after receiving written notice of such violation from the harbor master and an opportunity to cure the violation within the 72-hour period may result in termination of this agreement by the Camden Select Board. And that is because the review is part of that process. I remember this when we made this thing, that's what kicks it. That's what gives the town the right to sort of say, no.
Does the license holder have a right to terminate?
I mean, I think they would just, by terminating, they would be violating it, so then.
By not paying, they would terminate, I guess.
But anyway, we're not really on that.
So that's already been an issue.
Yeah. All right, sorry, we got a little sidetracked, but that's good, the discussion there. So I think in terms of the transfer process, which is what was asked of us, I think that we've discussed that we need to continue the annual reviews, and I'll talk to Steve and we'll perhaps codify that a little bit more, structure that a little bit more, but we do now have that written review. The license and birth transfer process is, as it currently is set, works perhaps ought to be spelled out a little bit more, where they come to the harbor committee first for recommendations and then it goes to the select board. And then the agreement for the overnight birth we actually need I think we should have a document or at least an annotation of something beyond an invoice line. But assigns that birth to the individual vessel. We did want to talk a little bit in this process about fee schedule. I think that I believe that is with regards to both, we're taking them all together, the license and the birth. The licenses we do review on an annual basis when we do the fee schedule, and that slightly jumping off our agenda, but that will be a October item, is we're going to start talking about the fee schedule. So that's for the whole harbor, not just for the base service. I would propose that we discuss that at that time. You know what I mean? We talked about the overnight birth because it's a line item.
what I would like to see before then is the revenue that current fee schedule has generated.
Yes. So this, thank you, Bruce, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because this is not about the day sailors and windjammers, to be clear, but it's about the whole harbor. Every year we are asked to look at the fees, the harbor fee schedule. And I feel like we look at it a little bit in a vacuum, and I don't want to do the budget committee's work, but I think we're doing the work so that the budget committee can make good informed decisions. And therefore, I think we do need to see from, and I'm not sure, Sylvia, I'm looking at you on this, I'm not sure if it's from Audra
Jody.
or from Steve or
It's from-
Jody.
No, it's from
the actual-
Jody from the. I can ask Jody. I'll ask Jody by email when she can have. There's a little bit of lag sometimes, and also because we do take those fees in cash. I mean, not for the day sailors, but for the transient moorings and things like that. I'll check with her and get back to you today, Josh,
Okay.
on when the harbor committee will have a good,
And it doesn't
estimate
have to
of
be-
the revenue.
I wouldn't think we'd be using, we're not using this year's, we'd be using the last fiscal year's numbers to look at the budget. I would hope, I mean, I would assume it would be 22, 23 that we'd be looking at, but whatever.
I'll
just
ask
so that we
Jody when she
know-
can have it ready.
Yeah, just so we know expenses,
Yeah.
revenues, how much the harbor's making, where it's going, et cetera. Hello, Bob.
Well, that was in terms of like the head of the harbor floats.
All of the above.
Right, but my question is, head of the harbor floats, who actually builds them? Who actually replaces the chain?
The town.
Well, the town,
And so I'd also want to know what it's costing us to put those out there.
Absolutely. No, that's part of this. We
Okay.
need to see the whole budget,
Not just revenue.
not just revenue.
Yeah.
No,
No, not just
exactly.
revenue,
And
expenses.
some of it's going into capital budgets for replacing Steamboat Landing for replacing the day sailor dock, just got replaced. The little dinghy dock, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
so,
Sorry, 1 second, Mark. Is that, I would propose we look at the fee schedule for the license and berth. For the windjammers and day sailors at the same time as we look at it for the whole. harbor.
And what's our deadline?
to streamline, to back up here a little bit, to streamline, and when it's time to amend the license agreements, if we added the fee structure in there for overnight dockage. So, okay, currently the fee is $2,600 for your day sail dockage, all right? And then you have another line item, overnight head of the harbor dockage. And then you have another line item, agrees to pay $40 nightly fee at the town dock.
Right.
And that all becomes part of the license agreement. And that way it just streamlines everything. It's all spelled out.
Yeah.
We know, everybody knows
Sure. And
what's what.
to the last piece of the scope of our thing was the transparency aspect of this. And I think it's really important. I think this is in some ways is the most important piece that this is all handled at the harbor committee level, meaning in a public meeting where everyone can come and be part of it, or in a written an agreement that everyone has access to. I bristle at any potential idea that something's happening behind a closed door or that it's not, this is an inside deal. I do not think that is happening. I'm quite sure that's not happening, actually. But I think it's important that everybody knows that this is where these things happen. They happen in public. It's not, you're not dealing with private businesses here, you're dealing with the town. And that has to happen in public. So it's completely transparent. So I think that pretty much covered that piece.
When do we have to have a harbor fees?
December. We have to be done by December.
Before our meeting in December?
No, after our meeting in December. So I would say my goal, Elliot, is to start that conversation in the October meeting. Finish it. I'd love to finish it in the November meeting and present it. That way we can present it early, you know what I mean? But the deadline that was given to us was December 31st, actually.
Planning ahead, what novelty?
Yeah, it would be a concept, exactly. Well, that's, and I'll be honest, that's why I want to do this all together and with documentation, with budgets to actually make informed decisions. Sometimes it seems like we sort of go quickly and we have to, and I'm trying to prevent us from doing that. All right, anything more on the license and berth transfer process for day sailors and windjammers? And I want to emphasize it is for day sailors and windjammers both, not just for day sailors.
What's our path forward on that issue?
Our path forward is that we, I think Bruce has been taking great notes over here. I mean, I think that our recommendations are simply that we formalize the transfer process, meaning the existing transfer process. Meaning it would come to the harbor committee and then get recommendations and then to the select board.
The recommendations I have is continue the annual review, perhaps codify it a little more. License and berth transfer may need to be spelled out better, clearer, and a document for overnight berthing.
A document or
Attachment.
attachment or amendment or annotation, something. And this is where we get to, I think what we'll do is we'll present those and I think we'll probably present it to Audra, to be honest. Or to you, Sophie, and then you can present it to Audra. I don't want to go too far in drafting, all due respect to Bob, a legal document when we're not lawyers. And this is all gonna go through Bill Kelly, I can guarantee you. And so I don't want to really wordsmith it too much, because they'll figure out where it goes to a document.
Does the ordinance already talk about the overnight day sailor use of the head of the harbor floats?
Yeah.
Is it not comprehensive enough to simply have someone sign something that says, I take this subject to the rules and regulations in the ordinance?
Because it
So-
is,
Go ahead, Josh, I'll go after you.
I was just gonna say, because this is such an important, can be such an important piece for some businesses, you know what I mean? That I think it's important that it sort of be spelled out as much as possible.
Well,
Because there's money transferring.
the concern I have is that once you start diving in there, and I was just saying this, every brick you put in the wall has four seams of interpretation. So every time you put something in there, okay, well, now we want to say, how much notice do they need to get that they can't be in there that night? And the next thing you know, people are fighting about, well, that call came in at 2:05 instead of 1:55. And so I didn't, just, I don't know how much you want to detail it. If the basic thing is your second place, unreasonable notice, stuff like that.
Mhm.
It may fall under don't fix a problem that doesn't.
A little bit, right.
So-
I mean.
Yeah,
and if it's a
I think
problem-
Steve. I think
So-
Steve is managing that pretty well, right? I think he has his hand on the pulse, and maybe that will be also something that could come up through the review, that somebody consistently calls at 2:05 and then complains that they don't have a spot, right? So I think we need to be sensible about this and put it in the hands of the harbor master to manage the operations. The ordinance does not manage operations, right? So I think we don't need to, as Bruce says, we don't need to fix something that's not broken yet. But I think for the sake of transparency, it needs to be spelled out in those licenses. I think that the recommendation Josh is making, I think, does make sense. And I just wanted to add that traditionally, committees don't write legalese. You give recommendations on what you feel the ordinance should address, and then Bill Kelly does his magic Bill Kelly thing and put it into legal stuff. So you don't have to worry about that.
Sorry, folks, I was rescuing 2 guineas, not one. 2.
Oh, Oh,
Who's here?
hi, Steve.
I, off the, excuse me, you're gonna make
And
us.
Jody.
Yes.
Well, I just
Jody.
wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jody. I'm the new harbor clerk. So I'm at the front desk up there anytime you need anything.
We only added 10 new duties for you.
Yeah.
I know, I've been watching it.
Oh.
She called me up when I was rescuing a dinghy. She goes, you better get to that committee meeting. Or they're gonna have me doing everything.
I'm talking about you. All right, well, welcome.
Well, is it Jody with a Y or an I?
Jody with an I. So now there's two Jodys spelled the exact same way.
Jody Finance and Jody Harbor.
And what's your last name?
Richards.
Richard.
She's good.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You heard your name earlier, Jody, right?
I did. I've been watching it. I have desk duty a little bit this morning too, so I've been watching it on YouTube.
Well, Steve, I don't want to go completely over the entire meeting, but we have been talking about you at great length. We have been singing your praises at great length. I know you weren't here though, so sorry, but it's all recorded.
It's all recorded.
Do you want to? I think we're basically done with that topic, the licensing for transfer process. Do you want to talk a little bit about your harbor master's report? Tell us how things went over the weekend. I heard we had a little bit of blow.
Yes, yes. And then I'm actually gonna, because I still have one dinghy, I couldn't get up with the rocks at the tides. I'm gonna go get that, but I wanted, yeah, because I still have to get a dinghy up the rocks. I've got one off, the rescue one's still waiting for me. Then Jody called me up and I had to come in anyway, so, yeah, I'd love to give you a quick 5-minute, 10-minute rundown. You all were there, you saw what was happening. I have a hurricane procedure in place. And so I had to get it out and, blow it off and, redo old numbers because people, this person's gone, this person's not here anymore. But, it all went pretty smooth. When that curved in 3 days, when the projection cone says it's 3 days out, and then it curved in coming closer, then all of a sudden the red lights went on because you're like, oh, this thing could really hit us and be, damaging. Not that when there's a hurricane coming, you don't take it serious, but there's more serious than not. We started getting stuff ready. The only thing that had happened was we had one person, their sail came undone.
Yeah.
And it shredded itself. That's it. There's Ray, I gotta tell him to call him back. So that's another thing that happened is the Mercantile's got 3 chains holding it to go south. One of them's an extra kind of, and that actually, it actually parted. Because we had this huge gust. I think I saw when it happened. I don't know if you guys were there, but when it started to clock around northwest, then it funnels down Mount Batty and it's like shoots down into the harbor and hits you on the quarter. And I saw the boats. I was like, oh my God, that one person had to hold on to the building because it almost blew them over. I found out the next day. I dove on it, and the Scott brothers happened to be right there, and we went right to the bottom chain and got a brand new one in there. Besides that, everyone reacted very fast when I did stuff online. Jody helped get like emergency stuff out saying, get your boats off, here's what we're doing. We got to work a little bit on verbiage because folks were like, are you taking all floats out or just steamboat landing floats, stuff like that. Little things like that, but I was very happy with the way it turned out.
Were there any
Hey, Steve.
breakaways?
Can you also talk about, there was a meeting with the town, the Red Cross, the harbor on preparedness. I think it would be great to have that recorded in the harbor committee meeting. Can you talk about
Sure.
that a little bit, please?
Sure. So the 2 days before the storm, I went to I called up the big players in the harbor, CYC and Nancy and Charlie Foote, the 2 big inspectors, actually, and other people, and I basically even set it up the night before. Any volunteers that want to come to I call it a storm powwow, just to have everyone come in. And I was talking to the yacht club the day before. They're like, yeah, we can have it here. If you want to have it here tomorrow morning, let's do it. Just a chance to get together, bring your own coffee and make sure we're all on the same page. What is your forecaster telling you? What are you doing to be prepared? So we're on the same page basically. and it was good. I must have had about 20 people there. Red Cross showed up. I guess they had like 4 trucks. Because they thought when it did turn in, I guess the red lights went on and they had a lot of material and people, 200 people in the area were coming in. They were trying to find places for them to sleep in case it was really bad and folks ran out and folks ran out of water and stuff like that. I think that was because of the Katrina days, what happened with Katrina. But yeah, it was a good meeting, Sophie, and that's something that I think, I mean, it just takes a couple, it's basically bringing people together and just communicating. It's all that I wanted that to happen, and it was good. It worked well.
Yep. I agree.
Well, I think we dodged another bullet in that it was from the north and northwest. I think if it had come at one point when there was one forecast where it had to go west of us, and that would have been absolute carnage.
Exactly, and you bring up a point. What I'd like to do is in the next 3 months or 6 months over the winter, get the existing Camden Harbor hurricane procedure and go over it with you guys. It's pretty good, but like one of the things, if all of a sudden something turns into a Cat 4 or God forbid a Cat 5, I doubt, with the cold water, it's pretty rare up here. But if it becomes a really bad storm, there's got to be a time when you look at it, and I've got to figure out, everyone runs and hides, and they all want to use the town infrastructure because it's so protected in your harbor. There's a point where I've got to say, okay, guys, I can put your name down to you here, but be aware that there comes a point where I'm going to tell you with ample time, you can't stay here. You got to go to some hurricane hole in Carver's Harbor or Kent Cove and lay out everything out because I can't have anything here. And that's not in my procedure right now. And I was thinking about it this last time, like, okay, well, what if it's like, okay, sure, we can hold you because you'll be safe here. And then all of a sudden, oh, wait, no, you're not gonna be safe here. And you're gonna cause damage to our infrastructure if you're here. So I need to, and I might need a couple of verbiage on that. But besides that, it's a pretty good procedure. Like everything's in place. I'd like to get some more volunteers. This is the kind of storm that all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, what do I have in the cupboards?
We could also use the text messaging system from the town and use the phone numbers of people who have moorings, because Jody, you have their cell phone numbers, and add them to a harbor preparedness, because text messages work very well. And I was surprised we didn't use them. So maybe something also to consider in the preparedness plan. And I don't think it needs to be a hurricane. I think a tropical storm like we had is enough that we can put that preparedness plan together and include everybody in the harbor. I think it's a great idea, Steve. I fully support that.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I want to say, Ross, that Dave Bolshridge uses in case there's going to be a dam break, and all the people that live on the river, boom, they get this big thing saying you got to leave your house, or you should be prepared to leave your house. But between Facebook and the town website and Jody's emergency texting, I think we could work on some basic stuff and even hone that better. But yeah, good idea.
I did want to ask you, in terms of the storm prep, you went over and did a little quick rehab on Steamboat Landing, is that right? Beforehand to make the ramp work better or no?
Yeah, so basically I knew everyone was going to be using that, and I went with Nick, who's great. He works at Nick Cushman, and there was a pretty good sized gap because of the last 2 storms. He fixed it up. We fixed it nice. So it was like, so now folks could come in and not worry about hurting their, that much quicker. I didn't want folks to worry about it. It was going to be congested enough for folks coming in and out.
Yeah, it did make a difference. I used that ramp, and just that little repair.
Yeah.
It made everything work faster.
Smoother.
It also did show me the need for repairing those slabs, sort of what we talked about in this committee, on a more permanent basis, because when it all comes down and that thing is getting used hard, it needs to be ready for it. And you guys made it ready for it this time. But
any help when we met with FEMA, and I'd love to see where that's going, because they looked at that, and I don't know what's going to happen with the repair, the better repair, but I'd definitely love to do that before next spring.
Yep. It seemed like there was a good self-management over there. I did wonder if, should we have somebody over there, sort of, there was a line of trailers, up C Street and Cove Road. and all
Yeah.
that.
I threw my deputy over there for a while, and I said, don't get involved unless you have to, and he was like, they all seemed like they knew what to do.
It seemed like
It was
remarkable.
It was remarkable, he was showing, and I mean, it's like, it went smooth,
Well, I spent a lot of time over there, just helping people.
good, that's what we need, so someone who knows
Well,
what
you
you're doing,
told, you told me to, it's me.
that's right, and just like a little thing like, hey, back up, hey, this person's doing this, little stuff like that, and then it goes smooth.
Another set of eyes. when
It
comes to
did, it went
trailers.
very smooth.
So I'm gonna go to get this thingy, but we do want to say this, I've talked with Pam Parker, this is a slightly different subject. And, our state funded pump out boat is 22 years old. I've been doing fixes to it, it actually broke off its thing while pumping once and the whole engine flipped over. That was last year, I had to because the threads actually pulled out of the cast iron, so I had to re-drill bigger and get bigger bolts. I've been doing stuff like that, and I've been after Pam for a while. I saw her at the casting convention and she was like, before she said anything, she said, shook my hand, she goes, you need a new boat, don't you? And I was like, yeah, well, I said, it'd be nice because that one only holds 200 gallons. So long story short, she's going to fund us a new boat, 90%. It's a 23-foot. She gave me a guy that doesn't know, not Alcar, which is what we have. And we are scheduled, it's 15,000. So we got to come up with next to nothing. No, I'm sorry, it's 150,000 for the new boat. We're gonna come up with. Yeah, sorry about that. It was wishful, but it's a great deal. And once again, they're gonna pay for 90% of the upkeep and the fuel and the operator. And I said to her, well, do we give you back this boat? And she was like, no, that's depreciated itself enough. So you guys can do what you want with it. And so we're gonna get rid of the engine and stuff, the tank, and we're gonna use that as our basic Harbor Master Respond boat. We'll leave the tow package on it and leave the fender so we can, I mean, hell, I hip towed Barney Appleton, he ran out of fuel about the day before the storm, and I had to go get him. I'm sorry, he didn't run out of fuel. I didn't want to say that. Something happened to his fuel pump and it wouldn't pump anymore. Yeah, he'd slap me if I said that. But anyway, that's a great boat, and it's amazing because the fact that we can keep that for ourselves. Now the money I set aside for a new boat, we can put that somewhere else, right? So
Seymour Wharf.
Yeah.
Who's Pam Parker?
Pam Parker is the woman who initially came to me 22 years ago and said, do you want a state funded pump out boat?
But
Here's how it
is she with the state?
She's with the state, yes, state DEP, yeah.
Manage the whole pump out boat.
So we're gonna keep the old pump out boat and
Yep.
you're gonna continue to use that.
And we're gonna use that as basically my Harbor Master
So-
boat. So we're gonna get rid of the actual pump.
How would that be different than the new pump out boat?
The new pump out boat holds 400 gallons instead of 200 gallons. It's got a faster pump on it, so we can pump faster.
But couldn't you use that as the same way you use the old one?
You could, the only thing is that it's usually stinks, and you're usually busy pumping people out. So you go to do something and someone's like, oh, I just saw you go by, can you pump me out? Which is great,
But it's
but
be more of a dedicated. pump.
more of a dedicated boat that's more of like a go-to boat. We'll still keep the
You get a
whaler.
Spot for one, a dock spot,
That's another subject. I remember I proposed a new inner harbor float. I basically have another spot further out past where Maryland Bear had one, past CYC. I'd love to have another one there that we manage. If it's rough out, the 5 times a year we can't use it because it's southeast. Since my department's managing it, no one's gonna be on it. We could have a big sign on that one saying, welcome to Camden, Camden Harbor Master, channel 16, CYC launch, channel 68, give some basic informational stuff on that one.
But if the old pump out boat is an emergency boat, why can't it just sit on a mooring out somewhere where you go get it occasionally when you need it?
For the emergency,
Right.
you need it.
Oh, you do?
Well, if it's an emergency boat, then you don't want to take 20 minutes to go get it.
I guess my point is, I mean, so now we're gonna have 4 harbor master boats,
No, we'll have 3.
3.
3 in a
Three.
pump out.
3, because we sold the welcome.
Oh, you did?
Oh, the welcome's gone?
Yeah, that one, that was no longer in use. I talked to Audra.
Oh, goodbye now.
Yeah, that served its purpose. the
Oh,
welcome. We
okay.
didn't use it, so.
Folks, I'm gonna excuse myself because I'm supposed to be covering the
Thanks,
desk,
Jody.
but
Yeah,
Nice to
but
meet
Jody
you.
will-
We'll
we'll catch up on-
Doing a great job.
Yeah.
Now that she's gone, I have another idea for her to.
Yeah.
You gotta say it between now and when she gets back to her computer.
Steve, while you're here, the last thing, a different topic though, that we would like to get your input on, not now, is the possibility of using the Angelique's berth as a day sailor berth for overnight dockage, similar to the way Surprise and Lazy Jack use Louis R. French's berth and Mary Day's berth. And like I said, you don't have to talk about it now, but you might want to look at it and say,
Yep.
could that be, I know when Custom Float did the new docks, it's sort of a more robust system over there.
Yeah, it's definitely robust, and that's a possibility. The only issue is that the main dock, which right now we do rent two other boats, that is where one has the two chains holding it. The other one has a little, leaf that comes off it, which isn't supported by chain. So it'd be fine in light weather.
That's what I was.
If it's gonna blow hard, it might be too much if you had a big boat.
Or do we add a anchor up on the beach there kind of thing to hold it?
It's almost like you'd have to just put two chains crisscross on that one as well to hold it in place, which you could do.
So just think about it if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Awesome,
Well-
thank you.
Yeah, that's all, that's it. I'm gonna go get that. But this winter, I definitely want to talk about the idea of putting those two other floats in. I think it would help us. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, Steve.
No, I'm gonna put 4 steamboat floats in at 2:00 with Public Works,
Excellent.
for another 3 weeks.
Mhm.
Unless we get another storm, but yeah, because folks need them. I've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
a lot of calls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it only takes about an
Need
hour
them.
to come back, those 4 back in. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Sophie.
Steve.
All right, finally, just closing up here, upcoming meetings and topics. So, let's, to Tom's point, let's set our October meeting right now, please. And we,
Why we rotated back, is there any chance we could go back to a winter schedule of Wednesdays?
Tuesdays is actually the only day that now we have a couple of us have adjusted. So we really can't do Wednesdays, unfortunately. Could we do, let's see here, the second Tuesday in October will be the 10th.
I won't be here,
I won't be here either.
You will not, both of you guys will be here? All right, well, let's be flexible but consistent.
Third, I can make the third.
but I can make the third. But that's just a couple of weeks.
3rd or 17th.
3rd to the 17th is exactly right.
I think I can make it.
Either one of those fine with me.
I would prefer the 17th if,
Me too.
you two, Bob, right?
17.
You good with that, Tom?
Let's do the 17th.
Yeah.
Let's go with
I
that.
may or may not be able to.
Okay.
I need a vacation. Opportunity.
Vacation?
Yeah.
That's not.
All right, we'll plan on the 17th. In terms of topics, the fee schedule will be our primary one, I think, on that one. To get that started. I think that will be pretty much it. I'm trying to.
Josh, could we make sure that in October we review the recommendations for the transfer, the licenses, that they're really spelled out in the minutes or separately, and so that they can go to the harbor committee, to the select board, sorry,
Sure.
formally. I will bring Jim Bennett's application also to the select board. I don't think we can do it tonight because the agenda has already been published, but I make sure it comes quickly so we have a full slate.
Okay.
And I think also, I'm not sure by October, we'll have an idea for the mooring / inspection kind of dance that we need to do, but maybe in November. So I'll double check with Jody when she wants to propose something regarding that.
Good. Anything else, Elliot?
I have a suggestion for a topic for the committee, that is electrification of the town fleet.
Yeah, that's a good, you mentioned it before, it's a good topic.
It is the policy of the town. that every time we buy new equipment, cars, whatever, that we at least get a estimate of what an electric version would cost. So it's part of our approach, but thank you for
So-
reminding us that.
So should we be, I mean, Steve is rightfully excited to have a new pump out boat. Should he be talking to the state about that being an electric boat?
If they exist, I have no idea. I don't know.
These torpedoes are pretty, for a pump out boat would be pretty.
You can put a torpedo. You can put
Yeah,
a
you can
torpedo
do-
on a pump out.
You can put a big torpedo on it.
Well, there's other brands also.
Yeah.
There's multiple options.
So how would the pump actually run?
Right.
On a
That's
pump
probably
out?
not gonna be electric, I'd be surprised if there's an electric one.
Right.
Maybe there is.
Yeah.
Good question.
I think it's a great question. I think we should send it to Steve. I can do that and copy Audra on it and make sure that, you know, at least we can inquire if they exist, start the process now. Maybe it'll be the next pump out, maybe not this one. But
Well, and,
I think it's a good
you know,
question.
We'll see his budget, the harbor budget, when we get that from, the other Jody. And we can look at that, and I'm sure he's got in there to replace the whaler or the whatever, with another boat.
Yeah.
At some point, and so we should,
Yeah.
I think a really good plan, like, that be sort of top of mind when we're replacing something, can this be electric?
I think you want to get it in the pump out boat conversation immediately.
Yeah,
Because I have the general impression that this administration in Augusta is big on EVs, et cetera. So not let too much momentum go in the wrong direction before we bring it up.
at some point. Right, anything else before we adjourn? That's a wrap. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, everyone.